Welcome back. That was a great panel. I could have listened to that panel for another 30, 60 minutes because, in fact, they're going to go off and meet together right now out of all those conversations and getting to talk. And I'm excited because we're rolling many of these topics out across the day that were just introduced by this panel. So this next session is sponsored by one of our gold sponsors, Cash. And it is going to be panel 22, Rethinking Experiences, Future, or I should say Futures of Live Events. And let me first hand you over to Eric Gilbert, who will introduce the rest of the crew.
Hi, thanks for having us, Amplify. My name is Eric Gilbert. I'm based in Boise, Idaho, and we're hosting this conversation about the future of live events. And here in Boise, I run a multi-venue, multi-day music festival called Treefort Music Fest, and promote a variety of shows in indoor and outdoor venues throughout Boise, Idaho throughout the year. And yeah, I'm excited. I think we have a really great panel of folks that represent different sizes of markets. And we're all going to kind of introduce ourselves and talk about kind of how we intersect with live events and what's happening in our current location. So will come back around to me at some point, but I did want to give my fellow panelists the opportunity to sort of give a bigger picture about what they're working on. And I'm going to start with the nearest neighbor to me here in Boise, Idaho, Laura Wilson over in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Thanks, Eric, and greetings from the Southeast. I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I've been in Fort Collins for 4 years, and I work for the Bohemian Foundation, where I oversee our live music events. So that we have 2 venues, one seated and one GA cap at 900, called Washington's. And then we do outdoor events as well, normally a 10 show series throughout the summer, as well as a large 3-day festival called Bohemian Nights every August. I also work with the National Independent Venue Foundation, where I'm the treasurer and secretary and chair for about 6 months. We got a few venues reopened, but then they closed again. So now it's sort of a more interesting conversation, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you to see what's next.
Great. Ben, down in Los Angeles, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ben Johnson. I'm the Director of Performing Arts for the City of Los Angeles, the Department of Cultural Affairs, and I'm calling you from Tongva Land. And within my portfolio, the city owns 8 historic venues plus Amplify 5 of them. And as part of the work that I do is manage these venues and get them open and manage construction projects, as well as think about the future of festivals in Los Angeles as we look towards the Olympics in 2028, international cultural exchange programs with venues and artists in LA and other countries, and then advocate for LA and the music industry on a national and international level. Excited to be here, a big fan of Gigi Johnson, and way to go, Amplify Music, for this conference.
And then furthest away from the rest of us, Elia in Dubai. I'd love to hear about what you're doing out there.
Hey, Eric. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Elia Mssawir. I am the founder and managing partner for Big Beards Entertainment, obviously. We program and we organize shows and festivals in the region. And we also do artist management for regional artists. And what we do now is currently we work closely with the government on coming back to live events and how we try to make it safe for people to come back and attend shows. And yeah, that's basically it. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Gigi and Storm, and looking forward to this panel. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think obviously the real intersection with this conversation right now, we're all at a very significant crossroads as things are starting to reopen, but not there yet. For example, with our festival here in Boise, we announced our lineup for September, September. We usually happen in March, and it's essentially the September festival is our postponed festival from 2020, and now happening in September. And we announced basically 370 artists yesterday, and fully moving forward. But there's still a lot of unknowns as to how fully how we're going to pull that off. I think really interesting thing in the States right now is, and I know in California, we'll get into that too, it's things are reopening, but it's hard 6 months out to know exactly what, like, how reopened is it going to be. And I think it's so I think we talked, I really would like us to focus more on the future past this moment, but at the same time, maybe we can take a moment and just kind of talk about the state of where we're at right now and how we're thinking about these next steps. And Elia, I kind of want to start with you, with how things are looking where you're at.
Yeah, so basically here in UAE, it's totally different than any markets around the world, because actually we started going back to events and festivals from November 2020 on smaller scale, and now we built up towards now till April, where it went back to not having any concerts, not because of the pandemic, it's just because the holy month is happening now. So here in the country, so they don't usually host events, except they host corporate conferences, which is everywhere now. We are actually getting ready to fully operate on no more percentage. It's like 100% in end of May, June, fully going towards August, where the biggest exhibition in the world happening here, which is Expo 2021. We're discussing with the government how we're gonna have a secure space for people to attend as 100% capacity. And there's a lot of things we can talk about during the panel on how we did that and what's gonna happen. But yeah, we're fully functioning at the moment, and we have like I'm hearing from other promoters, like colleagues of mine, and probably there's over 100 festivals and shows happening here. And in Saudi Arabia, it's even more than that. It's double than that. Yeah.
What, just real quick follow up on that, like what's the appetite for live AE events right now? Does it seem like audiences are like, do you have everything's gone on sale yet, and you get a sense of how ticket sales are going or anything? Yeah,
so most of the shows that happened before this month were mostly comedy, and it's all sold out. Nothing in one day, they were selling out in one day. And we're talking, okay, the number is not massive, but I mean, we're talking about 5,000 to 10,000 capacity. It's a big number for here, so it's great. And the festivals, the expo tickets are like selling super fast. Obviously, these ones don't go out of sale because it's a 6 month event. But since they issued the tickets, it has been, they've issued a small number, and now they kept doubling that and tripling that every month almost. So yeah.
Cool. So appetite is strong.
And just a quick one. People try to do virtual events, which we'll talk about, and it failed here. So that's how much people want to see the live experience. So yeah.
Ben, I know just last week, was it last week that the governor in California announced reopening in mid-June? Do you want to kind of update us on the status?
So the Governor Newsom announced that there will be no restrictions and everything will be fully opened on June 12th or 15th, and I can't remember the exact date. So that's a really important pivot for everybody, or a moment to think about opening. It could be closed too, depending upon sort of the COVID levels. And but it is sort of sparking, what is the process of getting to be opened, and how do we get our artists ready to be opened? And in many ways, if you follow the restaurant scene, so goes then the music scene. So what they're doing to reopen restaurants is then sort of being adopted, in my mind, it's being adopted then by the music industry. And what was really interesting about Los Angeles is that because it's such a decentered and large city, what this time period has allowed is sort of a lot more community organizing with all of the venues and all of the musicians groups. So for example, there was never sort of a service industry to serve the independent music venues in Los Angeles, and now a new one is being formed. So the ability to community organize and address these kinds of issues, but also to get new policy made about how music can open and wherever it needs to be open, is a really new update or upgrade in terms of how we think about our city.
Are you seeing like some new spaces being active? Sounds like that's something you kind of work in, and
I mean, this is the land of creativity, and what a real impact for Los Angeles has been the movement to sort of outdoor into parking lots and streets and parks. So I think that happens everywhere. And since we're a 4-season town, there's always the opportunity to do that. But what has really had an impact in my mind in terms of events is sort of the immersive theater scene and immersive culture, which really brings in together 3D technology and car drive-throughs and sort of really reimagining what the live experience is. So it's not just a venue and buying a ticket and watching a show. It's really kind of a 360 environmental experience. And of course, you can get that to some extent at existing venues. But the level of creativity that I'm seeing in the city is really interesting. So it's just taking what I think is what's exciting is that it's just reanimating space that was unused. And so and everyone is so hungry to participate, and artists are really yearning to perform and to be, exercise their creative muscles. It's an exciting new stew, that is for sure.
Real quick, one follow up on the outdoor stuff. A lot of times, like outdoor events can be burdensome because it costs a lot because you have to build the stages from scratch and stuff. Do you see some new outdoor infrastructure kind of getting put in place through this?
It's one of the new muscles that are being developed by all of our venue managers. And there's this concept called sort of taking the areas around our music venues and turning them into entertainment districts, and working with our council members and their districts and say, we need to get rid of all the permitting process and loosen up the alcohol restrictions and say, let's create entertainment zones where people can buy a beer in a venue, walk on the street, and go to another venue. So this is a brand new concept for our city, and I think it's going to be transformative. I hope that it doesn't get bogged down with red tape, but there's a movement now to organize these really creative entertainment zones that sort of allow us to thrive and do it, as opposed to have red tape and policy prevent us from doing anything. So I think this is an emerging new development that I'm really excited about, and that can happen all over our city.
That's awesome. I know Boise's been doing some stuff a little bit like that, but I'm going to lean in on that. I think that's a great idea.
Great. I think the best idea I've heard. Yeah. I have another idea I'm going to share in a little bit.
All right, great.
Really good. That's a really good development.
Laura, you have really interesting intersection with venues, and like you said, some of the other stuff you work with, and you don't run a particular venue or anything. And I'm kind of curious, kind of the different things you're seeing in Colorado. Both, it seems like things are opening up pretty quickly over there, right?
They are, yeah. So a big shift for us is that everything went from the state level to the county level last week. So that's good, depending on where you are and depending on your assessment of where we should be, because there's a wide variance across the state of where people are and how many people. There's a 20,000 cap festival, on the Western Slope, and it's not exactly the same on the Front Range here or in Denver. So, I think it's an interesting time of figuring out what's possible. We need to plan things a little bit in this industry, and I think that's been really difficult to do. And even still, there's a lot of questions out there, particularly with indoors, I think, and what the distancing means and what does that even mean? I mean, looking at a micro level, our rules can be different in Fort Collins than they are in Denver or Boulder, but then you have the same thing for national touring across the country, where our rules could be different certainly from Wyoming's or from California's. So I think it's, figuring out how to get that national, synchronicity again, so we can sort of get things back in the flow. And that's some things that Neva has been working on as well. But for us, it's very much focusing on possible outdoor opportunities. I think that's, certainly doable. Unfortunately, unlike Ben, we're not a 4-season place when it comes to outdoors. It's a very short season. We just had snow yesterday. We'll probably have it again in a month, but soon, June, we can reliably do things outdoors. So that's what we're looking at. And then, thinking then again, trying to project into the fall when most venues are looking at reopening and what that could mean. And if that feels like a safe bet. It's also hard too, because our levels are not great as far as COVID at the moment. So you kind of have to balance loosening restrictions with also your sort of moral and ethical compass about what should be happening right now based upon what's going on in your particular geography. So there's some interesting things to contemplate at the moment, but it's certainly more hopeful than it was previously.
I think one thing that's kind of an interesting takeaway from where all of us are, and I think Elia touched on it a little bit with the virtual stuff, is what's interesting is even though there's a bunch of challenges still ahead for live events. Like the momentum for them to happen again is pretty strong right now, right? And so it's a pretty cool testament to the I guess the industry, or the live experiences are going to find their way to still happen, right? It seems like. So you guys all
demand is there from audience and demand is there from artists. So yeah, it's just a question of making it happen, which is our job.
Yeah. And do you guys foresee any major like changes to, anyone can chime in here, any major changes to live experiences? Like, are we all going to be wearing spacesuits in the future? Like, or do you think, it doesn't seem like it, but I was kind of curious. It seems like mostly we're just kind of going to come out the other side pretty similar to where we were before. So
I could say here in Dubai, so we have people who are either vaccinated or actually don't have to be vaccinated, but we all operate through an app by the government, and it shows if you did the PCR, DPI, and or vaccinated basically. And from that point, you know where you can move around. So for now, if you don't have the E thing, which is the vaccination, you're not allowed to enter governmental buildings. So and now it's going to be way more stricter for people who doesn't get vaccinated. So what they're trying to do is probably this is going to be implemented in the events as well. To enter the venue or the arena or any or club even, you have to show that you are vaccinated. We are at 60% so far, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully in the next few months, we don't have to use the app. Everybody can just go, it's mandatory to be vaccinated here. So yeah.
Not in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wish. I think like a lot of it's going to be managing comfort levels. It's less going to be about, making sure that there's a certain amount of distance and getting your maps out, as opposed to creating spaces for people that feel comfortable for them, because you're going to have your people packed in, standing at the front of the stage, and legally that's probably going to be allowed. But then you're going to have people that will not come and feel good in that sold out, packed in environment any longer. And we don't want them to be excluded from the events or limited to a stream or something like that. So I think rethinking capacity and space, not in the usual, like, how many people can we get in this room to make the most money, but how many people can we get in this room to make this event successful for the fans, all of the fans, no matter where they are. So I think that's something that should be considered.
So will like VIP sections be like socially distanced sections, or maybe there's an option like that people can choose or something like that? Do you think that you could see
I love that you just created an upsell right there.
Or a VIP pod, right? And people
yeah.
These little groupings, that's another, another thing to think about, or it's been a big conversation in Los Angeles, isn't just about how to be safe from COVID, but it's creating new safe spaces for communities. And there's a large conversation about some events that have happened in LA about how women are treated in these clubs and in venues. And so real negative treatment at all ages, performances. So I also think about, this is the moment that everyone's thinking about the new experiences about how anybody can go to an event and feel safe. And that, of course, you want women to feel safe. You don't want less aggressive, horrible behavior directed towards them by like drunk men or mostly drunk men. And but also that translates to the LGBTQ audiences, communities of color. And so this is that moment for that change. And a new thing, some new thinking that I'm really inspired by from some conversations I've just been recently having is there's a major institution in Los Angeles. I can't tell you who it is because, but I can tell you what they're doing because they're going to be announcing it themselves. So you're getting some sneak peek idea happening right here. And they have lots of music venues and really popular, important institution for the city of Los Angeles. And they are using this moment to sort of say, if you could change everything now, based on all of the sort of racial, cultural reckoning, social justice issues that we're dealing with, and we're looking at massive infrastructures and dismantling white supremacy models, if you could change it all, what would that be? And so they're inspired. They're using a book called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. And so their whole staff read this, and they're going to spend the whole year, next year, inviting artists, thinkers, and writers to reimagine every space in their venue about gathering. So it's really about audience gathering and what are the new ways to gather as opposed to only sort of preferencing only what the end product is of an artist being on the stage. Of course, that's important, but it's going to open up the door in terms of us really rethinking the structures of our halls, of where people gather, how they come together. And if you sort of focus on that in a new way, how will that influence change across your city and across the field? So I'm excited to see what that's going to be over the course of the next year and sort of what everyone can glean in that new learning.
I really love that, because I think so much of what we've learned is, how much our spaces are community spaces and how much we've been supported by the communities, various venues across the country to help stay alive. So I think that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Ben.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think live events often can be good like testing grounds for new ideas like this. And we often are we naturally community leaders on a lot of these fronts. And so that's really great to hear that's happening down there. Definitely. I definitely think that's a conversation within like NEVA circles and stuff, Laura, like definitely a lot of conversation about independent venues as well. Just like if we're going to come back, how can we come back better, clean up some of the other issues that were involved. And I know, and Elia, is there anything else with what you see, how things are coming back over there? Are there any things like that you guys are addressing?
Yeah, so basically, one of the things that's happening here is obviously if you want to apply for a permit to do an event, now the authorities has to have all the details about the event, the capacity, how much people are going to be in, what's the measures that are being used that the government implemented before, like or mentioned, that the social distancing, the use of specific cups, that I don't know, it's weird things in events, but I mean the type of the spaces between the stage and the art and the people, also the artist, or even if the stage is small, the artist has to have like I think 3 meters or something away from each member. All this it has been going on. Will it keep going after this month? I don't know, but yeah, I prefer to have it at least for 2021, just to all be safe and not, especially because Expo is coming up, and this is going to be targeting probably 25 million people from abroad. And how to control this, I have no idea yet, but I'm sure we're all excited for this, and hopefully it's going to be successful and it will show the comeback of events in the region here.
Great. We're going to have to be wrapping up soon. I just want to say thanks to Amplify for hosting conversations like this. I think one of the silver linings in the last year, not to overuse that phrase, but has been a lot of folks like ourselves getting the opportunity to connect with each other and talk about like what Ben was sharing, other things like how we can make this industry better. And really music is a natural connector, but that's the one cool weird thing about Zoom now is I think we are able to connect with people like Elia from so far away, and this has been really a great conversation. It's been good to get to know you guys a little bit. And, anybody else have anything else you'd like to?
I was going to say there's two really quick questions. One is for Elia, and then I'll quickly answer. The question is: Deep Tech LA Festival still stronger with community support in the city of LA? And my answer is I don't know. So, but a good question. I'll check it out.
Elia, do you see that?
There's no income tax, and the corporate tax is only 5%. As a tourist or as an expat or resident, if you just go into a hotel, you obviously have to pay like 5% on your alcohol drinks. But as a haram tax, it's not a thing. I don't know from where they got that one. But if you buy your haram tax, let's put it this way, from the liquor store actually pay the taxes that you pay for hotels. So in the hotel, I mean. So yeah, that's not a thing.
Great.
I'll just, since I'm here, just thank you guys for having me. I think we're gonna wrap up. Sorry again for the music, but really, I'm honored to be among you guys. And hopefully, in the future, I'm gonna be meeting you, or you guys come here and we'll meet all together. Yeah.
Yeah, Elia, when's the next event that you have that we can all come? To?
There's a lot, man. But save up for September.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Laura, anything else?
No, thanks. Yeah, thanks to Amplify for having us and for bringing us together. And again, I think it's great that we can have these conversations around the world now. And thanks, Eric, for moderating.
I just echo all of the same comments as well. And a big shout out to Gigi for conceiving of this and making it happen and bringing the globe together on these conversations. So thank you.
Well, thank all of you for being here. We owe you immensely, and this was a great conversation. Lots of shout outs in the chat. So you all are all stars, clearly, and we appreciate you. That will end this panel, but we will soon be moving on to our next one. And we do want to again thank the Creative Arkansas Community Hub and Exchange for their sponsorship of this panel. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, we're off.